In a previous video, I showed you how I created this forged carbon fiber foot peg bracket. We still needed to finish it up, so you can tell it's still pretty dull and needs the final top coat. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I finished this up by sanding it and doing a top layer of epoxy and maybe even a clear coat. So stay tuned. So this part has already been lightly sanded down in the previous video that you've seen. So you can see that the pattern looks really good, but there's still some steps in the part. There's still some voids that we need to account for. So using a file, you can actually clean up this relatively easily. Just know that it will leave behind some rough edges that will need to be sanded away, but a file is a good place to start. I like these little sponge sanding pads because they're easy to conform to whatever shape that you have and sand it down. But obviously in this case, there's going to be a lot of sanding required. And make sure that you are using a respirator if you're sanding any sort of carbon, because you don't want to bring this or breathe any of this in. So I used just a dual action DeWalt sander with a 6-inch pad on it to do a lot of the sanding. You can see once you get this wet, you can kind of really start seeing the pattern come out. So once it is sanded, it does get dull again, but with water or epoxy, it really starts to shine. So here I am mixing up some epoxy and doing a top coat, and this is to fill in any of the voids that are in the part from the forging process. This epoxy that I used was the same epoxy for, or what I used for the actual part, and it's really thin. It's a molding epoxy, and it didn't really fill in everything all that well. So I think in the future I would use a slightly different epoxy. I was just worried that if I used a different type of epoxy, it wouldn't adhere as well, because they're obviously different types. But in this case, you can see once the part is all cured from that epoxy, how shiny it is. But it is really rough. So as I start sanding this back, you'll see that there are some high spots and low spots that needed to be sanded through. So going through and sanding through some of that top layer of epoxy gets it down to something that is really smooth. But as you sand epoxy, it obviously gets really dull. So once we go through the sanding process and get through that epoxy, I'll go through and actually do a clear coat. I thought that I could sand this back and possibly polish it up, but I definitely need a clear coat. And plus the clear coat will also add some UV protection, which is going to be huge, especially on a motorcycle out and about. But so here is the me getting ready to spray the clear coat. This is a 2K or a 2-part clear. So the only downside to this is once you start mixing it up in the can, you have about 48 hours to use what's in the can. So definitely try to spray as much as possible. This goes on pretty well. I did about 5 or 6 coats, and you can see just from that, it is a lot shinier. But there is also a ton of orange peel in it just because it was sprayed with a spray can. And then here I did a little test piece of sanding down to see what that would look like. So I'm going to go ahead and start sanding. I got one of these small little sander buffers from Amazon. It works well. The only problem that I have is the lowest speed on it I think is a little bit too high. But I used these wet dry pads, and the key here is to definitely make sure that it stays wet as you're doing it, and then it won't gum up the pads as much. But this helped really a lot because I ended up getting pads from 3-inch all the way down to 1-inch, so I could get in that small little area. But this definitely did require a lot of sanding. I started at 1,000 grit and went 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, and finished up with 3,000. I probably didn't need to go that high, but I definitely just wanted to. And you can kind of start to see as I sand through, the orange peel goes away and those reflections from the light start turning out really good. So here I started using the Meguiar's Ultimate Polishing Compound, and you can see just with that first pass, it made a huge difference. I was shocked at how big of a difference it made from that 3,000 grit to just a really quick buffing with this compound. It really made a difference. So I went through and buffed up this whole thing, and then I used some finishing glaze from Meguiar's as well, and it just turned out absolutely spectacular. It's definitely a little bit hard to see, but once we get outside in the sun, you really see it pop. But it is so much shinier than I thought. Now the backside and some of the sides, I didn't sand down as much because you would never actually see it, so I didn't want to waste all my time doing that. So the bottom is a little bit rough and the backside is really rough, but they will never be seen. So just to take note, this is what it looked like when I first pulled it out of the mold. It had steps, it was rough, and then here's what it looks like with the original factory part. It really is so much different. And out in the sun, that pattern really, really stands out. It's amazing. It's a lot better than I would have anticipated. It shines so much better than I originally thought, and that pattern is absolutely beautiful. So getting it on the bike, it works really well. The one main bolt that goes into it is a little bit bent. It was like that, so I ordered a new one. I have to wait to get that in before I can actually apply some weight on it. But you can see with a little bit of light, that pattern of that forged carbon fiber really stands out. And it looks so good on the bike. Like, it's just, the pictures and the videos don't do this justice. The pattern looks absolutely stunning. And outside in the sun, it looks even better. I'm really, really excited for how this thing turned out. Now I can go ahead and start working on the other sides and the subframe, but this gives me an idea of what my forged carbon fiber parts are going to look like when they're all said and done. So thanks for taking a look at this video, and I hope to see you guys on the next one. And in the next video, I got something really cool coming.